The Syrian refugee crisis, it's known as the biggest crisis since the World War II. And I believe it's true. It's just because we are seeing the worst humanitarian response ever in the history. I mean, the Syrian crisis should not have been in this current situation if the international community started earlier in 2011 the humanitarian response to this crisis. I'll give you only one example, a lot of examples about this issue, but one of them, the UN High Commission for Refugees, UNHCR. Usually when there is a refugee crisis, UNHCR starts going to the borders and receiving the refugees, registering them into lists, and then they get them to the second step of housing and then healthcare and etc. In this crisis, in the Syrian one, we haven't seen this. In Lebanon, for example, in 2012, when the civil society organizations numbers was saying that there is about 600,000 Syrian refugees in Lebanon, UNHCR said that there is only about 280,000 Syrian refugees. It means that half of the actual number. And the reason behind that there was a lot of problems between the Lebanese government and UNHCR. The Lebanese government did not recognize that the Syrian refugees as refugees because of the political situation or relation between Lebanon and Syria. Can you imagine that these people were moved from a country to another country, and and somehow until now they are being treated as internally displaced people. And I still remember, like maybe by the end of 2012, there was a conference for maybe the Arab Fund, and there were a representative from UNHCR there. So we had this conversation why UNHCR is still delaying registering refugees and supporting them. He said, "Oh, simply because until now we couldn't find an office to rent." So literally, he said, we couldn't find an office to rent in Lebanon. So can you imagine, like, they are using such arguments to justify their situation. This is a very simple example about how this crisis started to get bigger and bigger as a snowball, and then because of the political situation or the geopolitical situation of Syria and its relations with Turkey, Iraq, and Lebanon and Jordan, like these countries started to use the refugees as a political card. Not only that's very true what Ben said about Turkey, but also in Jordan and in Lebanon and in Iraq the same happened. Like in Lebanon, they are closing and opening the borders for refugees based on the political situation and based on the fund. Whenever there is a fund coming, like a meeting or a conference for the G8 or for what we call them, the Friends of Syria, these countries, there is like they open the borders and start like promoting that we have 2 million refugees, they are not registered. Despite until now, the Lebanese government is not allowing civil society or United Nations institutions to build one single camp for refugees in Lebanon. These camps We see them spread in Al Buqa Valley and a bit and on the borders. They call it illegal camps. They were built by some smaller groups, and it's actually very very small camps, like a few tens of families, not like Zatari camp in Jordan, which I think the number now is 500,000 refugees in this camp. And recently, like only a few months ago, not only a few days ago, we discovered that only 23% of the Syrian refugee needs was met only because there is a very huge corruption within the INGOs. I don't know if you heard about the announcement of the U.S. International Agency, the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, that they stopped funding 14 INGOs because of corruption. One and big names, big INGOs like International Rescue Committee (IRC), and International Medical Corps (IMC), and GOAL, this Irish organization. We are talking about like $500 million. It's not only like a few dollars. So now they are transferring the money and the projects of these organizations to another organization. It took us like 5 years to know that this level of corruption within among the INGOs. And it was obvious from the beginning, by the way. Just if you go to Turkey and to the borders, there are about 16 camps, as far as I know, 16 camps for Syrian refugees. Just if you see the needs in these camps and the amount of money that's flooding into Turkey, you can just simply discover that the money that the INGOs is getting does not mean the requirements, and does not how can I explain it? It's the amount of money has been spent there. Simply, you cannot see it at all. It's not visible at all. Like, they are still intense. They are still in need for medical health. They are still in need for education and the school and a lot of things for everything. And it's not only in Turkey. In Jordan is the same. In Lebanon is maybe worse and worse. Before I wanted to jump to the resettlement issue, but before that, I worked with Iraqi refugees for maybe 5 years or 4 years, between 2008 and 2011, for 3 years, almost 3 years. And I was responsible for almost about 200,000 Iraqi refugees over all Syria. And there were more than 100 INGO is working inside Syria and on the borders. But that time you could feel that this crisis is well organized. I mean, the humanitarian response for this crisis. At least there was, for every week there is a meeting, coordination meeting for all the INGOs in Syria, in all the provinces. And they were discussing the projects and the programs they are implementing, so that no one is duplicating the other's program. Now in Syria, now in the Syrian crisis, there's nothing organized. You see, like okay, now there is a fund for education, so everybody is working on education. There is fund for capacity building for the civil society. Everybody is applying. Yeah, I mean, it's there. Believe me, I don't remember, like, between 2011 and 2012 that I met anyone or INGO is doing a needs assessment in Lebanon or in Turkey. They are just there, okay, there is, these are refugees and they need health care. Okay, let's get some medicine for them. So, and until now, the Iraqi fund is overloaded. I mean, the INGOs and the United Nations, they have in their pockets money for the Iraqis, the crisis in Iraq, and they don't know where to spend this money. Regarding the resettlement issue, I'm just highlighting a few things. Only 1% of the refugees around the world are being resettled. But I want to say, like, resettlement is not a solution for the crisis. Like, now, the largest number is goes usually to Europe, and then to Canada, and then to the US. And it's a very, very, very long process. Very long. In 2008, when I started working with the Iraqi refugees, there were like some cases applied for resettlement in 2006 and 2005. I came to the United States in 2013, and these Iraqi refugees until now are waiting to be resettled in the US or EU. So it's a very long process. A lot of interviews in the United Nations, in the UNHCR's offices, and then and for specific criteria, by the way, and for limited numbers. And the criteria, they started usually with widows and orphans, and then gradually they go to other cases. Palestinians. So for us as Palestinians, and by the way, UNHCR provides the refugees with protection status. Like wherever you are, and under the UNHCR responsibility, so you are protected legally by UNHCR, and they provide you with a kind of ID that identifies this person as under protection status. For Palestinians, because they are under a different UN institution, it's UNRWA. UNRWA is only for relief and work. So they do not provide Palestinians with protection. So Palestinians who could flee to Lebanon, and the few hundreds who could flee to Jordan, and the few thousands who could reach Turkey, they are not in Turkey. They are protected, but it's still in Turkey a problematic issue for Palestinians. It's still like a political issue for Turkey. In Jordan, no. The people who could enter Jordan, they were separated and put in a specific camp. It's called Cyber City camp. It's like a prison. It's like a Guantanamo. You are not allowed to go in or out or at all. It's like really a prison. But before that, UNRWA's region, UNRWA operations regions are Lebanon, Jordan, Syria, West Bank, Gaza. So in this West Bank and Gaza, Palestine, I mean, so in 4 areas. So wherever you are as a Palestinian refugee in one of these in these countries, so you automatically go under the classification of and the responsibility of UNRWA. You are not allowed to register in UNHCR. You are not allowed to apply for protection. You are not allowed to apply for resettlement. So only and it was the same case was with the Palestinian refugees in Iraq, but there were few numbers, like a few thousand, 20,000 Palestinians from Iraq left left Iraq, and they were stuck on the borders since 2006 between Syria and Iraq in two camps, Al-Hol camp and At-Tanaf camp. And Al-Hol camp was closed recently, like a few months ago. The last families were, maybe 4 or 5 families were resettled in Canada. And to resettle them, UNRWA and UNHCR came up with an agreement that they will create a focal point between UNHCR and UNRWA. This position will provide a list from UNRWA to UNHCR to identify some cases to be resettled. Now, the current situation for Palestinian refugees in Syria, they are under 3 kinds of sieges. They are besieged inside their camps, and you know the story of our Yarmouk camp, which is besieged since like 3 years and a half. They are not allowed to go in or out, and they are besieged inside Syria. If you are a Palestinian, you cannot go and live in South, for example. You cannot go north. The Syrian government issued recently a decision, ordered its checkpoints between Damascus and Aleppo to stop any Palestinian trying to go from south to north, and either to arrest him or them, or to send them back to their province. And the third siege, that even if you were lucky and could flee to Jordan, Lebanon, and or Turkey, you cannot leave these countries because you are not under UNHCR's responsibility. And if you you know that Palestinians in Syria, even if I was born in Syria, but I don't hold the Syrian nationality, and it's all in all the Arab world, it's the same case. But and so we don't have passports. We have the travel document, and like very little countries they recognize this document. Actually, there are a lot of stories to be said about the risky trip from Turkey to Europe. And if we all know people who are dying in the seas, but no, there are many other kinds of risks on their road, like starting with sexual harassment from the customs and police on the borders, to arresting and deporting again back to Turkey, or in some cases, but little cases, to deporting them back to Syria, and robbing them by gangs on the road and on their way. And these gangs, you feel, according to some stories I heard from people, that you feel sometimes that there is an agreement between the authorities in this country and the gangs who are robbing them. A lot of this story maybe, but I'm sorry for the time. Thank you so much.